Hi Lisa, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with Taking on the Giant. Can you start with a brief introduction about yourself, please?
Well, I'm Lisa Peng. I'm the daughter of Mr. Peng, who's a prominent human rights and democracy activist in China, but who is now in prison for life in China. These past few months have been to seek the release of my father's freedom.
When did your family decide to come to the U.S.? Why?
Right, so when we were living in China, my father, before I was born even, had already been working on human rights in China, freedom of expression, and basic fundamental rights of all people that are denied to many of the Chinese citizens. In 1998, he had already formed the China Development Union, which sponsored think tanks that gave his fellow citizens an opportunity to discuss censored issues like democracy. And he also published a book, The Fourth Landmark. And in 1998, the Communist Party stopped all his activities, took over the China Development Union, CDU, and arrested him. And sentenced him to 18 months of re-education for labor camp. So that was his first arrest. And when he was released, we decided that it was too dangerous to continue to live in China, given my father's motivation to seek to establish human rights. So we've actually fled from persecution, and we had to go through underground means by boat, by mountain, even by plane in the end, and it was a very difficult harrowing journey of escape. But we first, we had to go through Vietnam, Thailand, ultimately did arrive in Thailand, and that's where we were thankfully granted UN refugee status and accepted by the United States very quickly. So in 2001, August 29th, we landed in San Francisco, and we were living in the United States for 3 years, very peacefully then. In 2004 was when my father was rearrested.
Okay. How come he was rearrested then?
Right, so my father wasn't, even though he was already arrested for the first time in 1998, it actually fueled him to do more for human rights, even in the United States as a resident. So he had another organization that was also trying to promote human rights in China, and in the summer of 2004, he went to Thailand to set up a safe haven for persecuted political refugees like himself. But when he was in Thailand, he was lured by 8 secret Chinese police to the border of Thailand and Burma, which was very friendly to the U.S. at the time, and he was kidnapped there at gunpoint and kidnapped and brought back to China. And so his arrest was in violation of multiple international laws, like the principle of non-refoulement, which says you can't take a resident or a refugee back to the country that persecuted him in the first place.
Right.
He was denied his right to due process, no lawyers, no trial really, no legitimate trial at least. And so he's been serving a life sentence for 9 years, and I've been separated him for 9 years.
Is he receiving any help from any organization in China at the moment?
No, because China, there are very few human rights lawyers in China. So, but in the United States, this great country that stands as a beacon for freedom and democracy, there's China Aid, an organization founded by Bob Fu, whom I've been working with, and he's dedicated to human rights and supporting religious freedom in China. So, so since I started taking on this project, I've been working closely with Bob Fu, and we're going to work together with many organizations in D.C. and many individuals until my father is released.
So what kind of projects are you involved in specifically at China Aid?
At China Aid? Well, most recently there was the summit with President Obama and President Xi Jinping of China. That was when I went to D.C. for the launching of the Free China 16 campaign. So China Aid, with the support of 30 other NGOs, launched this campaign that has a list of 16 representative political dissidents who are in prison in China. My father's on the list. And at the launching, they had 5 family members of the 16 prominent dissidents to speak a few words about their family members. And there is another book called China, the Book of Dying and Living, that just came out in Taiwan. It's actually written in Chinese. It hasn't been translated yet, but that compiles the stories of about 80 political dissidents. My father's one of those. So I had to write several months ago a narrative about his life story and submitted that, and so that's published in that book as well. And that was released, I think, 5 days ago in Taiwan.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, that's the latest.
Congratulations on that. And you've also written a letter to President Obama?
Well, I've been working with several congressmen and talking with several State Department officials when I went to D.C. the past few times. In particular, the Congressional Executive Commission on China, and the chair, which is Senator Brown of Ohio. So he wrote the letter to President Obama. Well, he first wrote a letter to Ambassador Locke in China seeking my father's release, and then that week when I was in D.C. for the launching of the China 16 campaign, in anticipation of the summit between President Obama and Xi Jinping of China, he wrote a letter to President Obama asking him to mention my father's name and to seek his release. And if anything, the 9 years that separated me has only fueled me to be stronger and to know that I'm so lucky to live in this country where my rights are recognized. And because I am an American citizen now, I feel it's almost my responsibility, my duty to continue to reaffirm the values that I've been so lucky to have, but that many others aren't as lucky to have.